This week's guest is Mark Ridderhof. Mark had a career in professional basketball in the Netherlands for many years and is now head of sales for a UK-based startup. We talked very personally about the time when his daughter was born and the transition that he had to make from being a professional sportsman into a huge struggle, actually, that happened for him after that. We talked about a very long-running custody battle that Mark fought for his daughter. We talked about how he navigated that extremely stressful time and what he learned about himself in the process and how he takes what he learned into his life in business today. It was a really insightful conversation, and I'm very grateful to Mark for being so open with me about it. If you like the conversation, please like it on social media, please share it with whoever you know, and of course, please subscribe, as that will be hugely helpful to us. Thank you. I wanted to talk about your life in professional basketball, but really kind of the pathway to that point in time. How old were you when you began playing professionally?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, if I actually have to go back to when I hit puberty. So, I was kind of a problem child at the time because I was actually a professional gamer as well. So I think throughout my life, everything I put my mind to, it's like I could achieve it. Like once I had that focus, but I was kind of like figuring out life at that stage. And my dad used to be a professional basketball player, so I've heard a lot of his stories. I think at some point it got to me. Like he never pushed me to play basketball, so I've played basketball and I played football, and then I went back to basketball. And then through his stories, I got really motivated, and I was like, okay, what if I could, have that same experience? Because I felt like it gave him so many life lessons. And
Were you trying to emulate him? Were you trying to kind of be better than him?
Well, he was one of the best players in the Netherlands when he was still playing. So I was like, that's going to be quite the No, I think it was more around figuring it out myself. Like, cause I knew I was not him. I was never going to be him. But obviously, I was looking up at NBA players. Like, okay, maybe I can do some of this. So. I think I was like 15, 16, then I joined like the youth at the time was at Zwolle, and I was practicing once or twice a day, and I went from 1 to 2 times to 5 times a week, so it was quite the jump. So at the time I was still growing, so a lot of sore knees, but I quickly realized that, okay, if I want to get to at least the pro level, I have to work on my game. So I started like living and breathing basketball every day. Even outside practice, I would practice for 3-4 hours, shooting for myself, crafting my game, because I think I started fairly late playing basketball, because a lot of times you go through a youth program and so I had a lot of catching up to do. And for me, I just fell in love with the game. So really seeing myself grow the more I worked. I was part of the youth program. It was like playing on national level already, like traveling around. I think what really accelerated kind of my career is when I had a tryout for the Dutch nation team, like the youth nation team, and I was a pretty unknown player. And right before, I think the week before, I was in practice and I hit like a metal board, so it's like a metal pin that came in and I could barely walk, but I was kind of upset because I was invited for those tryouts, again, unknown player, but I literally busted my ass off and I stood out from the rest because they saw I was diving for every ball and just, trying to do whatever I could. And that got me into that team. Eventually we ended up winning the European Championship. It was B division, but still it was for me, a really great experience to be part of their journey, but that really accelerated my career as in, okay, I can actually, if I put my mind to it, I can actually make things happen. And when you're young, you don't really think about sacrificing a lot of stuff, but I think I noticed when I focused my energy at the right things, I could make things happen. So, and then I played for a variety of different teams, but it was really about the hard work, putting in like every day, even outside practice. I was the first one to come in, the last one to go out, and even when I was going to school, I would practice for 3-4 hours in the gym by myself. Just loved the feeling, loved the being by myself, working on those things, and also being alone with your thoughts. That for me was a combination of things that I could not find anywhere else. So that really helped me to become a better player.
So it's like a combination of being driven, being kind of naturally driven, and also you realize that there was that time that you were spending by yourself training. It gave you the ability just kind of to understand yourself at the same time. Yeah. But I think that's so you would have been in your teens at that point in time, right? I think that's quite unusual for somebody of that age to be thinking like that.
Yeah, looking back, it was quite unusual because again, you have a lot of people in your environment like, hey, wait, you're always going to practice, you're always doing this, you're always doing that. But for me, I think this is why I was kind of a problem child and clashed a lot with my parents, because I was very opinionated and I was very much an independent thinker and doer. And I felt like, I could take on the world like any other
teenager.
But I actually made things happen. I felt like even my parents at the time, like they were like, they could see the passion for basketball, but they realized I was just school. I was the worst student ever. But I think my mom figured out that if she challenged me, that I would actually do it. So it's like I remember figuring out like it was my final year, and she's like, if you graduate, I will eat my shoes. And I literally told her, well, then start eating. And it's like I felt I had a certain confidence in me, which I've always had. But
you like that challenge.
Yes.
You're motivated by targets, by
very, very goal oriented. And so if someone puts something in front of me, I will go after it. And I have learned to take a step back sometimes to understand, okay, don't be a true Taurus and but maybe first come up with a game plan and see is it realistic? Like that's the thing. But sometimes I feel like going in hat first and figuring it out along the way, it will give you sometimes a lot more, because you will not think about the consequences at that time. So, what can happen, right? What's the worst that can happen?
Did you need a little bit of structure, maybe? I'm just thinking about, your mum. What she said would have been intentional, would have been deliberate, because she would have been trying to steer you down a certain path, understanding how you work, understanding that you're very motivated by achieving goals. So did you need a little bit of structure as well at that time?
I think so. I think this is where they kind of struggled, maybe, because I think my parents were pretty free. There were certain rules, obviously, but they are always, and they've always been like, you have to figure it out. It's your life. My dad was really strict, because some of the things like he taught me was really go after things. Like if you want something in life, no one's gonna bring it to you, and that's still stuck with me till this day. Like you have to go after it yourself. Don't wait for anyone to give it to you. It's not gonna happen. So I think what would have helped me is maybe a bit more structure, but then again, maybe I wouldn't be the person I were today. So it's, and that's, obviously I have a daughter myself, and that's also try to steer her, but not too much, because she needs to figure it out as well. And I think that's kind of what I really enjoyed, even looking back, and even though it was hard at times, and just, you know, you're figuring out life at the same time, you know, but yeah, it gives you certain life lessons that otherwise you probably would not have gotten. So structure would definitely helps. It's still now I need structure in my life, but I have certain routines. So obviously practice. You know, I work out six times a week, go running twice. I still have certain routines in my life, but the structure has always been the downside. But yeah, working on it. That's,
yeah. I'm just going back to basketball and your dad. I'm curious about. So he was a you know, at top of the tree in the Netherlands. You said before. Was there ever an element of kind of other people's expectations? You know, the Ridderhof name in basketball, and having to live up to being the son of, right?
Yeah, well, definitely, definitely stories about, you know, your dad was this, your dad was that, but I tried to let it go, because like I was like, I'm not my dad, so you know, I was trying to be me, and again, I think he grew up in a different time, started way earlier, so he kind of had obviously a head start, but also he was very talented. I think I was not the most talented player, but I always tried to be the most hardworking player that was out there. Obviously I don't think it was affecting me that much. I tried to just let that go.
Did you and your dad talk about it ever?
We talked about basketball, but not about that. I think, we both knew, we're different people, so.
Yeah.
But that's always something that people talk about. I think that's quite natural. They always compare people to one another. But again, I've learned at a young age, you can compare people, but they're different. So.
You were talking just now about, fulfilling your potential. You knew you had talent, maybe not as much as your dad, but to ensure that you made the most of your potential, you were the hardest working person there. When you think about, I'm just kind of switching now, about the team that you lead at the moment in work, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But in terms of helping people fulfill their potential, everyone's an individual. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm very opinionated about that, because what I try to do is analyze the gaps. So what are their strengths, but also what are their gaps, and really try to show people that your previous habits, what people told you previously, it doesn't matter, because eventually you are the one who's responsible. So, and I think that's something a lot of people struggle with. At least that's what I've experienced. It's like,
and just being specific, struggle with understanding that they have gaps, or it's about what people have told them to that point. So
obviously the gaps that's something they need a coach, but understanding that they have the power to decide how good they will be. It's an open field, and I think a lot of people, and especially nowadays, are waiting for something to happen, but you have to be proactive to become really good at something. And my belief is, if you're not passionate about something, it's very hard to get good at it. So you have to find something that you're passionate about. So, and that's kind of what I try to figure out with especially my team. Okay, what is your passion? What is your ambition? What is your drive? Where do you want to go to? And help them with, tips and tricks, and also show them hey, if you want to become a top performer in sales, that's up to you. And that's obviously, you can wait until people give you the leads and whatnot, but you can also map out your own journey.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where I want to go. This is where I'm at. What do I need to get to that point? And I think I've done it in basketball. Funny enough, when I transitioned to business, it took me a while to understand that the same rules apply.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need someone to show you, give you those insights. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do with my team, to help them and enable them to become what they want to be. And maybe that's a completely different role or a completely different company. That could be the case. Yeah, but I always feel like that's kind of what I expected from leaders in business as well, and kind of what I've missed, I believe. So now I have the opportunity to be that person. And really show people, okay, this is the journey you can map out. This is what your journey could look like.
Yeah.
But you will have to put in the work. I can only show you, but that's you. I can help you along the way. And even with friends, it's like that's my best friends. We do this. We try to challenge each other, and just that because I've always had I will figure it out one way or another. And I am the baseline, so I don't think I will fail. It's just another lesson, and that's what I try to bring to the table with my team and friends, even and anyone who I work with or have conversations with.
And I think it's a really important distinction. I interviewed Penny Powell recently, and something that she said that she learned, I think, relatively recently, which completely transformed the way she thought about life was. So it's a distinction between two types of people. One who believe that kind of life is happening to them, and they're like they're on the conveyor belt, and and the other type of people where they create the life that they want to create, and kind of the empowerment that comes from understanding that it is possible to create what you want to create in life is really incredible.
Yeah. Well, that hit home for me like a long time ago, when it's like, but I think when you become older, you then understand, okay, this applies to everything.
Yes.
Rather than just not only pro sports, it also applies to personal life and business, and it's kind of like the growth and fixed mindset, right? That's kind of if you talk about Simon Sinek, for instance, he talks about that a lot. It's kind of the same, like growth, being proactive, making things happen, whereas a fixed is like, okay, why does this happen?
This is who I am.
Yeah.
I can't change it.
Yeah. And I think that's a blocker, for like a mental blocker.
Yeah.
Once you make that switch, then you can kind of do anything you want.
Yeah.
If you want. That's the thing.
Yeah. It's an incredibly exciting discovery for people when that happens.
Yeah.
You said before, again, just switching a little bit, you talked about the transition from pro sports to what I'm calling normal life.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was like for you, but you read in the papers about pro sportsmen, elite sports people, footballers, for example, who, when they finish playing, struggle. Personally, they, addiction, marriage falling apart, that kind of thing, because they, being a sports person is their life. They've kind of grown up like that. Their identity from childhood is, everything is towards becoming an elite sports person. Their daily life is with the teammates or dedicated to that sport, and then when that falls away through injury or retirement, it can be incredibly challenging. Mental health suffers, that kind of thing. Was that your experience, or was it something different?
Looking back at it, definitely was, because funny enough, obviously I'm turning 35 this week, actually, on
Happy
Thursday.
birthday.
Well, thanks. And it's always time for reflection, like where's the time been? That's one thing, but also how, what's the journey been like? So obviously when I was 24, I got the news that I was becoming a dad, which was kind of a surprise. So that was the first kind of, I don't say mental hurdle, but more or less, okay, how am I going to make this work with what I'm doing today? When my daughter was born, I played for another year, and then I realized, okay, if I want to be part of her life, I need to make choices.
Right. So it was an intentional choice. I need to finish with my sporting career.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a lot of things at the same time, because I also felt like I've lost the passion. Like when you come to a certain level, there's certain politics, and it doesn't always go the way you think it's gonna go.
Yeah. And
I also realized that, okay, if I want to see my daughter, because we were not together, I have to make choices, because I was playing games, obviously every weekend, throughout the week I wasn't available, so there was no time. And especially my mom raised us as, whatever happens, your kids that's
the most important.
Most important, because if they can't trust you, then that's their start of life. That means. So I had two challenges. Obviously, when I decided to quit, it's like you fall just in a black hole. Like you have to relearn everything. Obviously, I've had like work besides basketball. So I was doing when I played in Amsterdam, I had a full-time job, and we would practice every day for 3 hours. So
wow.
Yeah, so I've been in that situation, but basketball was the main focus. Obviously, my job was my job, but
you were working so you could play basketball.
Yes, exactly. So it was basically two jobs we were doing. So I fell into a black hole and really figuring out my place as a dad and how I would navigate that. So I think in one way it helped me, because obviously you have to be present, even though you're still figuring things out. But I did really notice, like, okay, the camaraderie, the joint goal chasing you have, like the trophy hunting mentality, that was gone. Like, okay, it's just now me. So what has really worked for me was going to the gym. Like that was my new kind of passion, and like where I could be with myself. And figuring things out, me alone with my thoughts. So that transition wasn't easy, but I had to figure out a new passion or drive, because I knew.
Going back to what you were saying before, if you figure that out, then everything changes.
Everything changes. So I think that really took me a few years, because I went back to Amsterdam, worked a full-time job, but I couldn't cope with kind of the mental stress I had with everything that was going on with my daughter. So I quit and I started working in a factory for like 4 days a week, 10 hours a day, just to clear my mind, and also to do like physical labor, which again really helps you to.
I've heard that a few times recently with entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs of businesses. A little bit of wishful thinking, saying, "I wish I could be I wish I could be a bricklayer. I wish I could be something that is manual labor. It's almost a meditative thing. Repetition.
Yeah. So that really helped me to, try and give everything a place, and just figuring out where I wanted to go. And obviously bills had to be paid. I had to be there for my daughter. So it was really a lot of things at the same time. And I think once that was really settled at I think it was 28, 29. So it took me a few years to really find my place. I was like, okay, I feel like I've reached a certain threshold, baseline. What am I going to do next? Because my number one goal is to be part of my daughter's life, and then work was obviously, that was not as important. So that was my number one goal. But in order to get there, I need to have a house. So I think in 2 years' time I saved up for a house and bought it in Amsterdam. So really, that was my goal, to have a place where I could bring my daughter, where we could have time alone. Once I had that, I was like, okay, what's next? So,
and I just want to pause on that, because you told me before that it was a very difficult time with your daughter's, the mum of your daughter, and I'm wondering whether, because you there was a extended period of time where you had to go to court a number of times, and it was very challenging. Was one of the reasons behind that because you were in this really dark place, and her mum, was there some kind of reluctance to have you associated with your daughter because you were in this place? Was that something to do with it?
I don't think that was the case. I think both of us had to figure out a lot of stuff. I think there was just, you have two parents with two different opinions, and but I really felt like I had to almost like prove that I was worthy of being part of her life, if that makes sense. Which I think, from a basic point of view, I think every child should have both their parents in their life, but that's obviously another topic. But I think, I knew I was the baseline, so I knew there was like, I had control. I knew, even though it was challenging, I knew there was always a certain baseline, because obviously you have two hands, you can work, you can make money or earn a salary, and that's kind of like where I was like, I never felt too good to do anything. So if I have to be a bricklayer, or have to do manual work, or have to do whatever, I don't mind. It's fine. I enjoy it anyway. I think those are respectable jobs. But it was more to provide that baseline for, I've had like a house, kind of like, it's very hard to say, okay, I've flatmates, so I want to bring my kid to, a house with flatmates, for instance. So at the time I had my daughter at my parents' house, so I would drive to the Netherlands, pick her up, and then stay at my parents' house. So she also had a relationship with my parents. But I don't think that was the case. But people have their reasons, and that's fine. People figure things out. At the time, obviously, I didn't agree, but she also had her own journey, and I think right now we're more aligned, and it helped me to become the person I am today. So it taught me a lot of resilience, and also what's important in life for me. That was the.
What does resilience mean to you?
Basically, holding the line. No matter what happens, you decide how much you let it affect you, and you still decide what you're going to do with the setbacks. And I think just standing up, you will, there's one thing in life I've learned: you will get hit in the teeth at least once.
The old Mike Tyson phrase. Everyone's got a plan until they're
punched in the face. And I think that's a given. It's okay. What is your next step? How are you going to respond? And I think that's kind of, for me, is the resilience. Just don't give up, and make sure you think about the next step rather than let it affect you. And that's kind of like what we've already spoken about. You create life, or you just let it happen. And I've always admired people who will turn those things into, we'll just make it work. There's always a solution. And it's kind of my dad has always mentioned this, like, there's always a solution. There's not this, it doesn't end here, like, but you have to make it happen. It's not going to be easy.
No. And I like, again, a distinction. A lot of people, I think of resilience as being able to bounce back, and that's certainly part of it. But for me, it's about bouncing forward. Taking those hits, learning from them, learning about yourself, understanding that you are growing and developing as a result of them. So you're kind of better and better and better every time.
Well, that's a really good point, because for me that is really what it's about. It's okay. I'm learning, and that might even change your perspective on the failures you have, and especially in business, it's like it probably won't work in one try. Let's take a step back. Okay, what can we learn from it? Try again. I think that's how you grow as a person.
How much of those skills did you already know from your time as a pro basketballer?
Yeah, that's a kind of a natural tendency.
But was it difficult applying it to, you in that black hole you're in? Even though you had those skills, did it take some time to understand, actually, I have this wealth of experience and skills, I can apply that to where I find myself now?
Right now, yes, but at the time, it was, because you're in an emotional roller coaster, it's very hard to take a step back. So I think a lot of those times, when it storms, you really get to understand who you are as a person. And I think for me, that's kind of a natural tendency, is to, okay, but I am in charge. But if I look back with the information I have now, I probably would have had a different approach, maybe. But also, you don't know what you don't know. A lot of people cannot help you in that situation either, because you have to go through it.
Yes.
But that's a really interesting point, because now you have a source that you can tap into, which I can see now. It's like, okay, but even at this day and age, if something happens, like, because your first reaction is going to be emotional, maybe it's a hit on your ego, but if you then take a step back and you learn from, but I've been this, you start to recognize those situations. So I think when I was younger, that was tough. That was more of a reflex. But now I can see, okay, I'm actually analyzing my thoughts and feelings and see, okay, what am I learning from this? So it's you start, it's almost like you're training your mind to.
I think, I like that analogy. I think it's true. We train our bodies. Those of us that go to the gym 6 times a week. But many of us don't train our minds.
No.
And it's the most important organ that we have, right, between our ears. So I think, for me, if anyone, whoever's listening, that's one of the most important lessons that can come out of this. It's such a tool. It's such a tool. So train it.
I've been. I like, for instance, the books, obviously David Goggins, that David Goggins wrote, but also Extreme Ownership, for instance, from Jocko Willink, and it's kind of like it describes what I've always been kind of thinking, what I've been doing. It's like, that's why I enjoy. It's like, I'm not the only person that does it that way, or this is really interesting. It starts to make sense now. Like, because sometimes you feel like I'm an absolute nutter. But then it's, maybe, if you're a professional athlete, I think there's
an element of that.
There's an element of that, definitely, but it then starts to make sense, which is really interesting. Also that you're not alone. I think that's, because during that time, a lot of times I felt alone. It's like people don't really understand. And I try not to bother people around me, because I felt like it was a burden for everyone. So I was like, I have to go through this alone. But then you realize, I'm not the only one.
That's right.
Who's going through this. So I've also realized now, when coaching a team, talk to other people, it's like, okay, maybe I can help or share some stories. I do some mentoring with younger kids in my neighborhood. Just by sharing my experience, they're like, I'm not the only one who feels that way. And that's, I think, is a powerful.
100%. This is really important, and it was a question actually I was thinking about asking you about a minute ago. So it's great that you've said this, because I think in Western culture, growing up, we're taught that we need to do things by ourselves, and I think maybe especially so for men, I don't know if this is true, it's just my feeling about it, men are not good at asking for help.
No, we're really bad.
We are really
we suck at it.
Yeah, that's right, because we think asking for help is weak. We don't like to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is weak. In fact, it's the opposite, right? The bigger the support community network that you have around you, the more that you say, actually, I need help, the more powerful that can be.
Yep.
And it sounds like that's kind of your experience over time as well.
Yeah, most certainly, and especially also with my best friends, they're all kind of the same. They have kind of the same mentality, but now we see, we bounce ideas off each other. Hey, can I, pick your brain on this is an idea I have. I'd like to get your opinion. And it's like you all of a sudden see, hey, that's really interesting, and you also see where other people's strengths are. So one of my friends really structured, so I envy him because it's one of my weaknesses. But what he likes about me is I'm always going in without I'm not holding back. I'm not afraid to fail, basically. So it's kind of like we can learn from each other, which is really interesting. But then again, also in teams,
you need different personalities.
I could not foresee a team full of people that are like me. That's gonna be fun.
I wanted to ask about both in the pro sports context and in a normal life. It's really interesting. You talk about you go all in without thinking about. You're not afraid, and there must have been times in your sports career where something was on the line. A crucial game, a championship was on the line, and I'm imagining that certain teammates might have been fearful, might have been under stress. What was your kind of experience in moments like that?
Yeah, I think for the people that just they have their minute, they play regardless because that's their position. I think they're kind of fine, but I think especially the role players, they have to shine when it matters. And it was affecting me as well. I think that's a normal response, but what I've realized is I actually enjoyed it. Did
it make you play better?
Yeah, I think it just I was sharp.
Yeah,
it made sure I was sharp, locked in, and even though it was the nerve, sometimes it was like, oh, this is actually good because I felt like this. It means I care. It also means I want to perform the best way I can. So again, training your mind is almost like that's what you do. And funny enough, I had this last year. I had to do I was at one of our partners, and it was like a sales kickoff with can't recall how many people were there, but I had to do a talk, and I felt the same. I had the same feeling I had when I was playing basketball. I was like, hey, that's interesting.
The adrenaline,
just the nerves, and hey, this is interesting.
Yeah. But in that moment, and if you can take yourself back to those moments on the court, what was the thought process? You were feeling something, but what was the thinking that kind of goes with that?
The thinking was I've practiced for this moment. Rely on what you've done. What you can do. And I was a 3-point shooter. That was my specialty.
So the thinking wasn't, what if I fuck this up? What if I make a mistake? It was, I've got this, I've practiced.
Yeah, that's a very tough conversation. But you really, again, your mind can be your biggest friend or your
biggest enemy.
And that's really what it comes down to. So,
and that. Were you always like that, or was it a process of having to train your mind in the way we talked about?
It's a process, because obviously I struggled with that when I was playing professional sports as well, and I think everyone does, and there's been, what was interesting, there's been a lot of Dutch nation team players who openly said, I work with therapists too, because a lot of times it's a mental game.
Yes.
Right? Because if you play 3-4 bad games or you made 3-4 mistakes, okay, that has an effect on
Yeah.
you as a person. So
And the mental game separates the best from
Yeah.
everybody else.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So and that's kind of the biggest lesson I've learned is, okay, your mind that's really where it happens, and your body will follow.
Yeah.
Because again, if you're stressed out, your body will feel stressed out.
Yes.
And same with any type of feeling. So if you can talk to yourself, train your mind in such a way, and you don't have to fool yourself, but also like, hey, I'm feeling this. It's okay to feel this way, and I've recognized this, and it means I care, or it means I want to perform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you train your mind? Is it a case of, so you were just giving an example there of, okay, I'm feeling a certain way, but I can do this, or whatever the kind of the positive spin on the thinking. Is it kind of, again, a process of repetition, establishing those kind of neural pathways to say, to take that, what might be a negative, and make it a positive thought process?
Yeah.
Yeah? Is that what you did?
Yeah, so I learned this later on, but I kind of, like, when I was playing sports, I was kind of doing it, again, you have to cope with it, so you have to find a way, but what I've really learned is to analyze what you're feeling. So if you feel something, all right, let's take a moment. Because it's usually before something's going to happen, because when you're in it, you don't have time to think about it. It's leading up to a game or to an important, I don't know, exam or whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
It's taking a moment and just, close your eyes, feel what you're actually feeling. Because it's, and this is funny, I've done some work on this with a coach, actually, because I
was
want
a sports coach?
No, just an individual coach, and what he told me was, actually, it's a good sign, because that means one, you're alive.
Yes.
Second, you can actually feel stuff, which is good, and it's about taking it in. Like, hey, what am I feeling? Because it comes and it goes, right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of. But the longer you try to fight it, it's gonna haunt you. But if you accept it, like, hey, why am I feeling like it? Okay, that makes sense. Okay, but I've done this before. I've done this in practice. What's the worst that can happen? And that's when you really start to think. It's almost like a conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
You're having. This is where what I like about the books, for instance, from David Goggins. He's very extreme in what he does, and obviously he's very vocal. But the key thing he says, it's constant conversation with yourself. And what he's saying is, everyone can being happy is not difficult, but being like consistent when things are not going your way, that's when it matters. Then that's what you need to. That's when you need to have a conversation with yourself. Like, hey, this is fine, but what are we going to do about it? Or what are we going to do? And it's really, I think, just being aware of what's going on. A lot of people, you rush through feelings, you rush through what your experience is, but if you take a moment to actually like feel it and close your eyes and understand what's going on, then you start to recognize those things, and also just say, it's fine. It's normal. I'm glad I'm actually feeling this way, because it means I care about something.
Yeah.
And I think that really changes, at least for me, changed my perspective on a lot of things.
I like that, and I imagine what's also happening when you're going through that process is that you're slowing your mind down. And when you do that, then it's a more kind of peaceful experience.
Yeah.
Because the feelings that we feel tend to, because our thoughts are going 10 to the dozen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a freight train just going through your mind.
That's right.
Especially when you have just all over the place. Really stand still. Okay, what's going on? Boom. Pump the brakes. And I'm also someone, I always drive left lane, or at least in the UK it's the right lane.
Yeah. You drive fast.
I drive fast, but also in my thinking and my acting.
Yeah.
And I've noticed, okay, let me just slow down. Because for a lot of people, that's hard when you have a team. It's like I can go really root, and then I look in the rearview mirror, and then
you've left everybody.
I left everyone behind. So just slowing things down and thinking about what is actually going on. And that's when you really start to. And in a way, I've always done things like this. Because again, being by myself, playing basketball or going to the gym, or like that's when you also have those conversations. But now I can see the patterns. Now I can see, okay, if I've had a tough day at work, I need to go to the gym. Because I know the conversation is gonna be happening there and put things in perspective. But if you just keep on going, you can end up in, as the. Really
so the gym is the place now where you're alone with your thoughts. And it's for you, it's an absolute necessity because you think so quickly, you live so quickly, and this is a place where you can slow yourself down. And kind of process the experience of the day or the week.
And this is, I think, again, coming back to sports, that's been the key thing in my life, always like doing something, exercise, and even, if I do some mentoring with the young kids, like, let's go to the gym, If you struggle, let's go to the gym. And also it enables for conversation, which is obviously you want to work out, but maybe sometimes you take that moment to have a conversation with someone. Like, hey, how are you feeling? What's going on? And I think that's it opens up a lot of doors. So train your mind, train your body. Sometimes it's a combination of the two.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm reflecting kind of on the way I work, and so I don't go to the gym at all. I don't work out, but what I do is karate a couple of times a week. But that's a really different experience because in the gym, as you said, you're thinking a lot of the time and processing. In karate, you're not thinking about anything other than what you're doing in the moment. So it's a different kind of mental activity, mental exercise. Very, very meditative because you're not thinking other than you're very present in the moment. So I suppose, again, for anyone that's listening, there are different ways of doing it.
Yeah, and for some people, gym is also being in the moment. I think that's kind of, you have to figure out what works best for you in that case. But some people go for a walk, or they have a dog. Love to have a dog, but no time. But and that's also like a lot of people always ask, okay, how do you do this? It's like that's the tricky part. You have to find something you like, and for someone that's the gym, for you that's karate, for someone else that's walking the dog. A place where you can really structure and put things in perspective even. And sometimes not thinking about it at all can help you put things in perspective.
Yes.
Because then okay, this is not only life, if that makes sense.
I recognize that. I walk to the dojo, my mind full, and then I come out of the dojo and my mind not empty, but my mind calm. So I'm just going to get a time check. Dwayne, how are we doing?
51 minutes.
51 minutes, okay. A few more minutes. So I wanted to talk about coaching. What makes a great, from a pro sports perspective, and it may be the same as kind of leadership in business, we can explore that, but what makes a great coach, a great leader?
I think in pro sports, I've had all types of different coaching, different leaders. I think the best ones were, I think they were all really good at some areas, because I think a lot of people were more on the mental part, the other ones were more on the confidence. So I think that's really, it's a tough one, because I think everyone kind of needs a different type of coach.
Yeah.
Because it's all about your personality, you know.
So are the best coaches those that can work with all different personality types?
Yes, 100%. I think, we've talked about Jurgen Klopp many times. Steve Kerr, I think, is also one of them. It's that for me. There's not a one size fits all. So this is what I try to emulate with my team as well. Try to understand what makes their clock tick.
Yeah.
What are their goals? How do they work?
So you're getting to know them as people.
Yes. Yeah, and also a lot of that requires a lot of one-to-one time. So it's time consuming, but I think it's necessary to help them.
Yeah.
Enable there, because I think that's kind of, and I always distinguish between two things. You have managers, you have leaders. I think leaders enable people, managers just, they do people management. And I think again, in pro sports, you have to perform, a coach, it's very difficult. You have to perform fast. So, but sometimes it takes a year, in my opinion, or it takes time to get to know people. So, are you aiming for short-term results? Then you have to find the best players and hoping that it clicks. But longer-term results, you can work towards getting to know people and, work on their craft, put them in the right place. And
is that any different in business? So many businesses are very kind of short-term in quarterly targets and all that stuff. So you have to perform in the short term, but also you're playing a longer game.
Yeah.
Because you want to have a longevity of success.
I think that's changing now. I think it's more focused on longevity rather than the short-term success, because especially around the past couple of years, there's been a lot of changes, especially in SaaS, for instance, the software industry. There's been a lot of VC money. They expect short-term results, but in reality, and Simon Sinek talks about this a lot. Do you prefer the team that does a lot of shoving and elbowing to get to their goal, or do you have a team that takes a little bit longer but will reach the same goal, but in a healthy environment? And I think that's the route you have to take, especially in business. I think in pro sports, the thing is everyone works towards a really common goal. So probably you have a lot of players who won, championship is the goal from day one. That's why they join. But why it doesn't always work, because not everyone is aligned.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of egos. There's a lot of things going on. I think in business, it's you have people with work-life balance. You have people that feel work is not the most important thing, but you still need those people. So how are you going to make them successful? And that's kind of like what I see as a challenge in business. Because I have a pro sports background, but not everyone has the same. So how do you make sure you create an environment where people who are not been a professional athlete can also be successful? Yeah, for me, sales has always been something that's very common to pro sports, but now I'm stepping up. Now obviously I'm part of management, so I can see, okay, it's everywhere in business. You need to figure out the best people. You need to have the best line managers to make sure you get the most. So everyone has a common goal, and I think that's a new challenge for me to understand. But it has a lot of similarities. But sports, it's once money is involved, people expect short-term results. Yeah, that's the balance. I think people have to.
How do you? So the best coaches are able to. They treat everybody as individuals. They get to know them as human beings, and then they're able to support them in the way those people need to be supported. How do you, from that perspective or from that point, how do you then mold a collection of individuals into a cohesive team?
For me, it's really about giving them autonomy to make changes and to give them trust and confidence. And I think that's kind of where it starts. And what I've seen is once you give people the confidence to do certain things and also to do more than what they think they can do, they start to move towards one another. And I see myself more as a facilitator. So, you know, creating alignment between different departments. I will facilitate the first couple meetings, but then I'll hand it over and say, okay, now you run it. This is what you want to achieve. And this is what, you know, there needs to be an input and there needs to be an output, obviously, but kind of like leading by example and then pulling myself out, if that makes sense. So that's for me, I feel like that works well. So I'm showing them, and this is where I always feel like my biggest strength is just, I'll just figure it out along the way. I'll go first, I'll figure it out, and then I can, you know, revert that back to anyone in the business, like, hey, this is what I've seen, this is what I think we should avoid, this is what I think we can focus on, and then just facilitate and help them, take them on a journey almost. Because in a lot of business, people are not really used to working together. Everyone, they say there's alignment, but is there really alignment? And that's just hard work, putting in real effort. So I think about, again, summarizing autonomy, confidence, and facilitating, showing, leading by example. And then also, you know, holding people accountable. This is where you say you want to go. This is where you're at. This is what I need from you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. And in pro sports, in a team environment, I imagine the players are holding each other accountable as well. And I'm also imagining in the best business teams that happens too. There's the leaders can create an environment where it's expected that in order to elevate everyone else, you have to hold each other accountable.
And that's spending time with one another and just being in the room, talking about and making, you know, creating a common goal, creating a common output, like, and I think if you're, as a leader, you have to get out of that conversation, because then you can facilitate, but if you get out, then the real conversations start. And like you said, they're holding each other accountable, and that's kind of what I've seen with one of my earlier coaches, who he tried to create that environment, balancing short-term success as well. So that it was really interesting. It was just spending time together and really get to know each other. So also outside work, doing things together, meetups, seeing people in real life. So there's a lot of remote work. So what we try to do is, okay, so for instance, sales, marketing, meeting up once in a while, put everyone in a room, have discussions. And that's how you earn trust, you build that relationship, but also then you can get to a point where you don't have to be in that meeting at some point. You can, you know, say, hey, figure it out.
Off you go.
Off you go.
Yeah. Mark, I could talk to you for another hour comfortably, but unfortunately time is up. Listen, it's been a really, really fascinating conversation. Thank you. I have one final question, which I ask of every guest, which is, if you could choose a podcast interviewee for this podcast, who would you love to listen to speak?
I'm a big fan of Jocko Willink, so probably Jocko. David Goggins, he's only there as an attendee once in a while. And Huberman, it's also an interesting, so those two I would say.
Okay.
So I like
if they're listening.
Thanks for having
the show.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you.